Pancake.
Soon we'll be making another run. The
Pancake.
boat promises something for everyone.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pancake Boat Podcast. I'm your host Chad. This is my co-host TF. How you doing tonight, TF?
Great.
Here's a little backstory on us. We've been friends now for about 9 years. We met online. The reason that we're doing an audio show instead of a video show is because we live in different locations. I'm from Maine. He's from Detroit. We have met up a couple times in person. Every few months or so, we take a little trip to Chicago. So we probably will have some video shows when we actually get together, and those will be some fun shows. Basically, I'm a fan of podcasts. I like to listen to them. So we got the idea to start our own. But the thing is, we didn't really know what to talk about. So what we kind of decided on is like kind of making like a pop culture show, talking about current events, things that are going on. Some we may know a little bit about, some we may not know that much about. It's kind of a work in progress, but we're hoping that we can kind of find our identity as time goes by. We're hoping to get some viewers. So if any of you are viewers and you want to send in ideas for us for the future of things to talk about, no matter how out there they may be, go ahead and send them in. We may not necessarily know what we're talking about, but we'll do our best.
And we are more than open to suggestions.
Absolutely.
Anything we throw out there, we will at least give it a very considered thought.
Cause we're just doing this for fun. Like, we'd be surprised if we even got like 10 people to watch this. So we
just want a fun show, really. We don't want anything too serious, too negative.
No. That's why we're avoiding politics. We're avoiding like serious news stories, like the tornadoes of today. That's probably the biggest story of today.
Yeah.
We really don't want to get that into that, but our prayers are with everyone that's been affected by it. It's a sad thing, but we really want to kind of keep sad things off of this show. Talk about more positive things. Maybe not all positive, but we want to keep it a fun show. It's a pop culture thing. We're kind of avoiding like the royal wedding. That's probably like the other big story of today. I'm kind of sick of hearing about it. I think most of you probably are as well. And honestly, even if we did try and talk about it, I'm really not sure what we would even have to say.
Well, for all I've heard about it, I really could not tell you much, if anything, about anything related to it.
I don't even know their names, to be honest with you. Prince Charles, I think.
I thought you were about to say Prince Charming, but I believe that is correct.
Prince Charming. Yeah, we're not going to talk about the Prince Charming wedding. What we are going to talk about today is the recent hackings of the PS3 Network, which will then transition into our next topic, which is our favorite video games of all time. Then we're going to talk about the popular social networking site Tumblr. Some people like it, some people not so much. We'll get into that, a little debate about it later on. Then we're going to get into our first kind of weekly segment of the week, which is the classic TV show of the week, where each week we are going to pick out a classic TV show from the past and kind of talk about it a little bit. Then we're going to be talking about Mountain Dew's backed by Popular DEWmand promotion, where they're going to be bringing back some sodas from the past that they don't have out regularly. And then we're going to end the show off the same way that we're planning to end the show off every week, which is with a movie review. Sometimes we'll be reviewing more recent movies. Sometimes we'll probably be reviewing movies from like the 90s, the 60s, anything we can find that we can watch together. That should be fun. Our first movie this week will be for the movie Sucker Punch, which we saw a few weeks ago when we were in Chicago together. We saw it at the IMAX movie. Pretty fun. We'll talk about that later on. But I say we jump right into our first subject. What do you think?
I think that sounds like a great idea. I'm ready. Are you ready?
All right. I'm pumped. I'm ready. I've been ready for this all day. Okay, our first subject of the day is the hacking of the PS3 Network. What do we know about it, TF?
Well, I gotta say, it isn't looking good. Apparently, up to 77 million of their users may have had their personal information compromised, which that is a huge amount of users.
Absolutely, and I myself have a PS3. I kind of prefer the Xbox. but I have a PS3. I bought stuff off there with my credit card, which really kind of freaks me out because I really don't want to have to change my credit card number, which apparently they have about like 70 million credit card numbers, or they may have credit card numbers. They have other information.
They have they have phone numbers, addresses, just all sorts of personal information that you really just don't want out there floating around.
It's a really scary thing. I mean,
it is, and word has it that the hackers responsible for compromising the security on the PlayStation Network, they are actually planning to sell the information, and God only knows who they may sell that information to.
And these people were apparently like video game hackers that were angry about.
Yes, they were. They were actually upset that the PlayStation Network actually and Sony had threatened to ban them permanently from their servers, and as a retaliation, as it turns out, it appears that they hacked into the server, actually brought down the server, and in that process gained access to potentially millions of users' personal information, which now they have, they could use in any which way they see fitting, and really it's just not a good situation in any way, shape, or form.
It's a very serious thing. I mean, they even have the FBI in this now, investigating it, and probably not. I think they're probably going to find the guys. It's probably not going to be too good for them.
I certainly hope they do, because as I said before, this type of information is just something you do not want out there. There are just so many ways this could go wrong, even outside of the obvious, which is if your credit card number is out there, you could potentially be put in debt by these hackers or whoever has access to your credit card numbers. But these people, they may have your address, your phone number, and even just something as simple as selling these phone numbers to telemarketers could be a very huge inconvenience to these millions of users on the network. So, hopefully PlayStation and Sony, they can get this under control, because this has the potential to be a very, very serious event here. This could be bad.
This never would happen on the Sega Genesis.
No, it would not have.
All right, that actually brings us into our next subject of the day, which is our favorite video games of all time. And I have to start it out with my favorite video game of all time, the Sonic the Hedgehog series.
And that also would be my favorite video game series of all time. I think, I don't think it's even close. I think it's bar none the greatest video game series of all time. Just so many memories go along with it. It basically was my childhood in many ways. Just a excellent series of video games.
If you were a kid in the 90s, you were either a Super Nintendo kid or a Sega Genesis kid. You either had Mario or Sonic. We were both Sega Genesis kids. Sorry for all the Mario fans out there. Mario's okay, but Sonic, he's faster, he's better, it's more fun to me. And I love those games when I was a kid. I used to play them all the time. I still play a lot of the classic games now, like Sonic 1, 2, 3, Sonic and Knuckles, even Sonic Spinball. They were great games. The music was great. They were fast-paced, just everything that I could look for in a game as a kid. And now I kind of play more for nostalgia value, but I still find them very fun.
Yeah, and they are fun. In fact, I actually still have my Sega Genesis somewhere. I wish it worked, because I would go back and I would play those games, because not only were they fast-paced, were they fun, were they challenging, but there are just so many memories associated with those games now. I just spent so many hours as a kid playing Sonic 1, 2, just the series as a whole. And I just don't really think that video games are made that way today. I don't think that anything can touch those classics like Sonic. It was a great series of video games.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned off air that's kind of lost today is back then, like now you can just save everything like a memory card or right on the console. But back then, once you lost the game. You had to start right over from scratch.
You did. And it would take you sometimes days, if not longer, to finish a game, because I got to be honest with you. Ever since they came out with memory cards and various ways of saving your progress in a video game, that really kind of killed video games for me, because back in the day it was such a challenge to actually finish off a video game, because you couldn't just save it if you made it to a certain point in the game. You would have to always start from the beginning and go straight to the end. And you know, there would be nights where you would have to leave the console and your TV on all night long just so you could finish it the next day. And there was no saving it back then. If something happened overnight to the video game, say it froze, which was something that did happen quite often, or if the power went out, or someone accidentally turned off your console, you had to start over again. And I think that really got me a lot more invested in video games than any video game could today, because you had to sit there and you had to play the video game. You couldn't just go half in. You had to go all in.
I think there's something to that I kind of agree with, but I really don't mind saving. I still love Sonic games today. I know a lot of people, they're not as much fans of the Sonic 3D games as they are the 2D games, and I gotta agree the 2D games were better. I mean, that's classic Sonic, but you know, I still like to play the Sonic games today. Recently, they brought Sonic kind of back to his roots with Sonic 4, which is another 2D game. It's very much the style of the old Sega Genesis games, and you've tried it, haven't you, DF?
Yes, I have, actually. I don't own. Actually, the newest console I own is a PlayStation 1. So I am really not much of a gamer today, as I have mentioned, but I do. A lot of my friends and my family have them. I'm a big family person. I like, hanging out with my family whenever I can, and that is something I do. I do play video games, so I have checked out, Sonic 4. I do enjoy it. It really is very much in the style of the classic Sonic that we all know and love, and saving isn't really an issue with the new Sonic games, because like you said, I play them more for nostalgia reasons.
Exactly.
And I have finished all of the Sonic games prior, so there isn't really that challenge aspect to it. But it is fun to go from the start and to the finish all the way to the end, because there are a lot of memories there, and it's a different experience today than it was when I was a child. So saving isn't really an issue for me these days.
A lot of times today, I'll just play Sonic. Like I'll play through the first few levels, just for something to do, and like I very rarely actually play games from start to finish like I did as a kid. But back then, man, I mean, there definitely was something to not being able to save and the whole challenge of it. I mean, it made every time you saw a game over, it determined you to start over.
It did.
Get right back there.
I can think of many long nights where I regretted a certain move I may have made during the game that would ultimately leave me with
that would haunt
screens.
you.
It would.
That would haunt you, man. And on the other side, there was Nintendo. I liked the Super Mario games. I really didn't like them as much as Sonic. I mean, they were fun. On Nintendo, I was more of a Donkey Kong Country fan, though.
Yeah, I enjoyed Donkey Kong. I enjoyed Mario. They were good games. Don't get me wrong, but through and through, I was a Sonic man. I was a Sega Genesis man. I still am to this day. I am still a big fan of those games. But Nintendo, it was a good system. I enjoy playing those games. They bring back a lot of memories. But like you said, I am a Sonic fan. There are no buts about it.
And then another game I used to love back then was Road Rash, which I think is
great game.
The best racing game of all time.
I agree.
I mean, basically what it was you'd be on a motorcycle, you'd be racing all these other guys on motorcycles. It'd be like I think the storyline was kind of like it was like an illegal race.
Yeah.
Because the cops would be like after you, they try and bust you, and it was like street thrashing. Like if another motorcycle could come along, you could like punch them. You get like weapons, like a chain. You could swing at them. It was just really fun stuff.
And one element I think to the game that on paper is pretty small, but I thought added a lot to the game was that if, let's say, you crashed your motorcycle. If you crashed your motorcycle, you fell off your motorcycle and you were rolling, and you had to get back up. You had to walk back to your motorcycle if you wanted to continue on in the race. And again, that doesn't seem like much on paper, but I thought that really added a lot to the game, because it felt a lot more realistic than most racing games do, where you're just in a car or you're on a motorcycle, and that's that. You're fixed on the motorcycle. If you crash, the whole motorcycle crashes with you on it. You aren't ejected from your seat like you were in Road Rash, and you would have to you could run back to your motorcycle if you could find it.
Yeah, you could get hit, you could get busted, a bunch of things could happen when you're on your
on a
feet.
motorcycle.
Right.
You could be arrested by the police.
I remember sometimes when I was a kid, like I'd crash the bike and I'd just like try and run off as far as I could to see how far I could get in the other direction without getting busted. And a really fun game.
Lots of good times.
Another racing game I like, kind of go back to Mario's. I really did like the Mario Kart games. Like Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo was fun, and I loved Mario Kart 64. Did you ever play Mario Kart 64?
Yes, I did. A very, very fun game.
Yeah, my friend had that. I didn't have an N64. I had a PlayStation. So I used to go over his house sometimes and play Mario 64. I like to play as Donkey Kong. It was really fun. I think that's probably one of the best racing games of all time, too. Mario Kart 64.
One of my favorite racing games, and this was a little bit later in life, or much later in life compared to the Road Rash series, but I really liked the Gran Turismo series. I thought that was a fun game. It wasn't a motorcycle racing game. It was a regular old racing game. But
I think I played those.
Yeah, I played that quite a bit. It was fun, but I don't think it had the charm really of like the Road Rash or the Mario Kart, as you mentioned,
Right.
which were just classics. Just in a league of their own.
I think something's kind of lost on video games today. I mean, back in the day, like, maybe it has to do with the fact that we were kids, but back then it just seemed like all the games were just more exciting. Like, nowadays, all you really get is shooters, which really isn't my thing. And it just seems like every video game, like, every time you see a commercial on TV or every time a new game will come into a store, it's like every game is a shooter now.
Well, back in our day, when we had games like Sonic, those really, I'm not exactly sure how to put it, but they were different than games today. As in, I mean, that's an original character, Sonic. I mean, you don't really see something that's has that much thought put into it. Like
Right.
These had their own characters, these had their own storylines and all that. And today, you don't really see a lot of that.
No, it's like, I mean, like I said, it seems like every game is like the same. What was that shooting game that you said before that you like to play?
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. To me, there's like no difference between Call of Duty and Halo. I mean, they might have like a different storyline, but to me, I just look at them and I like see basically the same.
Well,
game.
actually, they are, I believe, based on the same game engine, which was the original Quake. I believe the Quake engine, which was another shooter, one of the first shooters really to become popular. So they kind of all do really. They kind of are built off of the same general idea. Which don't get me wrong, they are fun games. I enjoy playing them. I play them with my cousins a lot, and they're my cousins' friends, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think that another thing that has really changed as far as video games go is they've almost actually become too realistic. It's almost they almost are too realistic. There's not really that element of fantasy with them as much as there was back, say, when we were kids.
Right. And one thing I kind of hate about video games now is that you can go in like every direction. It's really easy to get lost.
It is.
Like I know that sounds kind of stupid, but like back in the day, like you either went left, you went right. It was real simple. It was just. I think that they should have more games like that.
Well,
I mean,
video games back in the '90s and back when we were young, they were challenging. They were difficult to finish, but they were challenging in a different way per se than video games today, where it's challenging because you have to know what direction to even walk in or what door to open, whereas back then it was more of a difficulty, say, fighting a boss of a certain level or finishing a certain task in a level, not so much navigation.
One game series that I do love today, and TF wouldn't know that much about this, but I love the SmackDown vs. Raw series, the WWE games. I've been playing I'm a big wrestling fan. I should point that out. I've been playing the WWE games since I was a kid. I remember Royal Rumble for Sega Genesis. I remember WWE, WWF at the time, Attitude. And they started the SmackDown series in about 1999. It eventually became the SmackDown vs. Raw series. And in a lot of ways, it's actually, they've kind of downgraded it over the years. I mean, they've taken out some moves, they've taken out some features, but they do add a little something every year, and it's still very much a fun series. And if you're a wrestling fan, I think that it's really fun. Just, I like that you can play more realistic matches these days. I've seen the commercials for WWE All Stars, and to me, that's just a little too cartoonish. I like to have that very realistic feel when I'm playing like a wrestling game, like the simulator feeling. And I love those games. Those are probably my favorite games today. Like those and Sonic would probably be my favorite video games of all time. And sports games in general are pretty fun.
Yeah, they are. I really like the NBA Live series of
I'll play
recent.
those.
My brother usually gets one every year. One of the new game, like say '09, NBA Live 10, NBA Live 11.
What console does he have?
He actually uses his PC for these games,
Right.
But I enjoy the games. They aren't quite as realistic as the NBA 10 or NBA 11, which is different from the NBA Live in that NBA 10 or NBA 11 are more of a simulation type game, more realistic, whereas NBA Live is more of an arcade style game where it's kind of more freestyle, a little bit more of a fun game instead of so much of a realistic game.
That sounds kind of similar to the dynamic between SmackDown versus Raw and WWE All-Stars, but I'm kind of the opposite. I like the more realistic game. I mean, with WWE All-Stars, I mean, they all look like 8 feet tall. They have these huge muscles. They like jump at like 10 feet in the air. I don't really care for that.
Well, with NBA Live, both games are very realistic. One of them is just a lot more complicated to play because you basically have to know how to play basketball to know how to play NBA 10 or NBA 11 because
right.
they are very complicated games. They're very intricate. You can't just run up and shoot the ball. You have to say do a crossover move to break away from your defender and then shoot the ball, and you have to hold down a certain button to shoot and a certain to aim and all that, which you do have to do with pretty much any game, but there's just so much going on at once that it's a very tedious process.
But NBA Live keeps it more basic.
Yeah, more basic. It's more of a, you can't just run up and shoot the ball and it'll go in, but you do have to, there are different levels of difficulty, but it is more of it's more of a free game, more of a free-flowing game. It isn't quite as you don't have to play for a whole 12 minutes a quarter to actually get a decent amount of scoring. You can play for a 5-minute quarter or a 4-minute quarter and still get a lot of action. Right.
All right. Let's move on to our next subject, which is the popular, not as popular as like Facebook or Twitter, but it's moving up in the world. Tumblr. TF, why don't you tell us a little bit about Tumblr and what you like about it?
Well, I love Tumblr. Tumblr is very similar to Twitter and Facebook in that it is a social network. And it's kind of more similar to Twitter because it really focuses on the blogging aspect of social networking, but it kind of sets itself apart from the other social networks like Twitter, Facebook, and the MySpace of old in that first of all, you don't have a character limit like on Twitter, so you can basically blog as long as you want to, or as little as you want to, which I think is great. I really love the blogging features on MySpace. I've pretty much moved on to Facebook completely for the last 2 or 3 years, and Facebook really lacks that kind of the blogging feature, which is kind of a bummer. But now we have Tumblr, which is, it's great. You can share photos, you can share music, links, video. It's just a constant stream of media, whether it be written media or original media. It could be music or videos, and I just think that it has a place of its own on the internet. I believe it's a standalone social network. It has a lot of elements that you would see on another social network, but it's very original. I would recommend it to anybody to at least check out. If you're into that type of thing, blogging, social networking, I think that you can find a lot of people into the same interests as you, into the same things, and it's real fun. It's kind of something you have to experience to really get an idea of.
Well, I'm kind of on the other end. I've gave it a try. I tried to, understand it, and I just don't get Tumblr. And here's my thing is I'm kind of OCD about this stuff. I like everything to be really organized. And to me, Tumblr, when I go there, it's just like this big mess. Like, There's just like pictures everywhere. There's like these posts everywhere. I'm not even totally sure who's posting what. It's just like it's like this big mess, and it's just not really my thing.
Well, I can understand that because it is really a very large conglomeration of media and photos and it does take some getting used to. Personally, I'm more that way with Twitter nowadays because it's gotten to the point where I have followed so many people on Twitter that I almost can never keep up with just one person
Right.
on Twitter. I mean, I follow so many celebrities, so many different friends and their friends, and I don't really like the thought of just deleting people or unfollowing people off of Twitter. So that kind of makes it hard because I do want to get updates from these people, but it kind of makes it difficult, to get any one update from anybody.
Well, I follow a lot of people on Twitter too, but I still like Twitter. Just to me, Twitter's just like a simple thing. I mean, like you blog a little something about what you do every day. I mean, I don't do it every day, but it's fun to just kind of like put something down that you're doing. It's fun to tweet. Tweeting has become like a way of life.
Yeah, it has.
And Facebook, I'll admit I was actually kind of slow to like Facebook because I was such a big fan of MySpace, and I really, really hated when everyone started to leave MySpace because I felt kind of loyal to the site. I felt like I had put in like years of being on this site, and like all of a sudden everyone leaves.
I think we all did.
But but then MySpace, they started to change things. It's a very slow site now. It's really nothing but bands. MySpace kind of drove me to Facebook, and I like Facebook now, but I gotta admit, like, another thing that bugs me about Tumblr is I don't really want to say that I'm like anti-trend, but like a lot of these like trends, they just seem like they're gonna last for like a certain amount of time, and I really don't want to put in the effort in investing my time into something that's just gonna be forgotten about in 6 months.
Luckily, I don't think that that's going to be the fate of Facebook, but
I mean Tumblr.
yeah, or Tumblr. Yeah, Tumblr. I think it is gaining a lot of popularity. We'll see if it can hang on. I think that it is original enough that it will that it will find its own place on the internet. I think it already does have its own place on the internet, and I think that it will succeed. It already is a very big success. It's not quite on the level of Twitter or Facebook yet, and not that anything is on the level of Facebook these days. But I think that it's getting up there with the Twitters of the internet.
Facebook has a movie. It's here to stay.
Yes.
And I love YouTube too. Like our show right here is going on YouTube. I love that YouTube has managed to keep reinventing itself and just kind of stick around. It's like YouTube appeals to everyone. I think that's around.
I think everyone can agree that YouTube is great.
YouTube's probably going to be around for our entire lifetime.
Probably will be. The only thing that I can see actually taking down YouTube would be if the copyright issues really kind of overwhelmed everything. But if it hasn't happened by now,
they seems like they've kind of gotten better about that in some ways.
Well, I think that it's
like
grown to a size that now it's really almost impossible to keep up with it.
Well, the thing is, like back in the day, like people would put up like this music, and like the record companies would find out about it, they take it down. Now the record companies put up their own.
Yeah, and they
videos.
utilize the type of the popularity of YouTube to actually get their music out now. So
right, so it's like back then it was kind of like the record companies versus us, and now the record companies are kind of with us, and everybody likes YouTube.
Yeah, everybody.
All right, moving on to Mountain Dew's backed by Popular DEWmand promotion, the return of Mountain Dew Typhoon, and the return of Mountain Dew Pitch Black. I haven't actually tried Pitch Black. I know it was very popular. They're apparently bringing that back for a limited time now, as well as Typhoon. I love Typhoon. I thought Typhoon was one of the best sodas I've ever tasted. It was part of Mountain Dew's Democracy campaign last year. They had that. They had Whiteout, and they had Distortion, which were the 3 flavors that you could vote on. I really didn't like Distortion at all, and that really wasn't all that popular. Whiteout won. I'm really not sure why, because it just kind of tastes like Fresca. But I thought that Typhoon was it was so amazing. And Mountain Dew's been doing this Democracy campaign for the past few years, where they'll come out with 3 new flavors, and people can vote on which one they want to stay. That was how Voltage became a regular Mountain Dew. I love Voltage too, but I'm very excited about Typhoon coming back. And have you ever tried it, TF?
Which flavor of Mountain Dew?
Typhoon.
Typhoon. Actually, I have. I do enjoy it. But I actually have a question. I can't remember if this was Mountain Dew or not, but I remember a soda years ago. It was an orange type soda. I don't know if it was from Mountain Dew or if it was
Livewire.
Livewire, was that it?
Mountain Dew
loved
Livewire.
that. I loved that. That was probably my favorite of the Mountain Dews.
I think they still have that.
Do they? I have not seen it in stores in I don't know how long.
It's really not like as big as like Code Red or Voltage, but I know it's around. And looking at the Wikipedia now, it is still around 2003 to present. So if you look around,
I have not seen it since probably 2003 when they originally came out with the limited edition version of it.
You probably have to look around a little bit to find it, but it's still out there. And Pitch Black and Typhoon apparently are coming back. I heard it's Walmart. I don't know if it's going to be like everywhere or not, but
I've never had Pitch Black.
I've never had Pitch Black. I don't think I've ever even seen Pitch Black, to be honest. But looking online, apparently it's like really popular. So it's good that Mountain Dew is giving the people what they want. I really like the democracy idea. I really like the idea of introducing these new flavors and letting people vote on which one they want. But I think it was a great tragedy that Whiteout was chosen over Typhoon. With all due respect to Whiteout fans, I love Typhoon, and I'm really, really glad for it to be brought back. And I'd love to see some other sodas from the past brought back, like Surge. Remember Surge?
I remember Surge.
Surge was like the most sugary soda ever. Like they brought it out in the 90s. It was like this big thing in the 90s. Like for like 2 or 3 years, it became like this big fad where all the kids would drink Surge just because they heard it was sugar filled and it would drive their parents nuts. That was admittedly the reason why I drank it. I didn't really think it was that good, but it was all right. And I think it'd be fun to see them bring back. And what are some other like rare sodas from the past that you remember?
One soda I remember that I really, really loved that was only around for actually I think only a couple of months back in 2003 or 2004 or one of those years and it was only for the holidays. It was called Pepsi Holiday Spice or something to that effect. Holiday Spice, actually, that was the name. Pepsi Holiday Spice.
I remember you talking about that before.
It was I loved it. It was unlike any other soda out there. I guess if you were going to compare it to one, you could say it was kind of similar to Dr. Pepper, but it just was it was unlike any other soda I've ever had. So I loved that a lot. I was really sad when they didn't bring it back next year around the holidays. It was only that one year.
Well, you should email them, tell them to bring it back.
I will. I think I will.
Do they still have like that thing they brought out a few years ago, like turkey soda, and they had like bread flavored soda?
I think Jones Soda still does that every year around the holidays. I mean, they have a bunch of strange flavors anyways, but I think that's kind of just their thing they do around the holidays. Turkey flavor.
When you first think about that, I mean, it just sounds outrageous that they would even release something that like, who would want to drink that? But when you really think about it, I think a lot of people would just drink it for the novelty.
Probably, I would. I mean, I've been tempted to. Yeah. I've never seen it.
Did you?
I've never seen it in the store actually, but I've heard of it.
I think I'd give it a try. I think they had like gravy soda. I think they even had like a roll flavored soda.
Oh, and I'm just gonna throw this out there. To me, it's pop. Pop. It's not soda. It's pop.
We're gonna save that for another show. The soda versus pop debate. I'm Team Soda. He's Team Pop. If any of you are listening and you have a strong feeling about this, feel free to comment us or email us, and we'll talk about this on another show, maybe even the next show. But moving on now to we're going to talk about our TV show of the week. And this week's TV show of the week is
Happy Days.
Happy Days. Happy Days was a show in the 70s. It was about the 1950s, and here's actually kind of a fun fact. We wouldn't actually be friends or have this show right now if not for Happy Days.
Yes, indeed, we would not.
No, we met on a message board, Sitcoms Online. Give them a little plug. The Happy Days message board a couple years ago. We were both big fans of the show Happy Days when we were teenagers, which sounds a little strange, but if you were a kid in the 90s, you kind of understand because Nick at Night, like, like Nickelodeon was a very popular kids network, and at Nick at Night they would always show like these old shows like Happy Days and the Brady Bunch and all this stuff, and I loved all those shows. I thought Happy Days was probably like the best. I loved it. And when did you start watching Happy Days, TF?
I remember Happy Days from the 90s on Nick. I kind of was more into cartoons and the live action shows that were actually on Nick at the time. I really started getting into Happy Days, I think, when it actually came to TV Land in 2002, very early that year. I kind of started really getting into it. I really was fascinated with the fact that it was set in the 1950s. I mean, at the time, for several years, really, I had really been into the culture of the 1950s, the music,
same here.
TV, the cars, just the style, just the 50s in general,
and Happy Days in the first few years was a very good representation.
It was. It really got away from that towards the later seasons, especially towards the later season. It started getting away from that probably in the 5th or 6th season. It was still a really fun show. A really fun show, but it really wasn't a very accurate representation of the 1950s.
Actually, I love like the first 3 seasons because like they were very much like the 50s, and they had like a very fun feel. And then to me, the show just became too much about Fonzie.
Yeah, and Fonzie always was my favorite character, which actually is where the name TF derives from. I was known as the Fonz, but I do think that it did focus a little bit too much on Fonzie. I think that one of the great things about the first 2 seasons of the show was that it was very much a show that focused on all of the characters, not just
exactly.
Richie or Potsy or Fonzie. And in fact, Fonzie was not even featured very often in the first several episodes of the series. It wasn't until later on that he actually became such a pivotal character in the series.
And don't get me wrong, I actually really like Fonzie, but I don't like the fact that it became like Fonzie Mania, and they brought in the Tuscaderos and all that. That to me, the show just kind of became hokey for a while. Like, I'm not a big fan of like those middle seasons,
especially
for that very reason.
The Dude Ranch type episodes.
Yeah, they do that every year. Like they went to a dude ranch. They literally jumped over a shark, which is where the term "jump the shark" came from.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, and I actually thought the show kind of got really good again. I know this is not a very popular opinion, but I actually thought the show got like really good again in those last few seasons because they calmed down a little bit with the Fonzie stuff. They started focusing a little bit on Joni and Chachi, who I liked. I was a big Scott Baio fan. He was like my idol when I was a teenager because I'm weird. But I liked Chachi. I liked those older seasons. I liked Roger. Those were fun times.
Yeah, Roger. I really actually like Roger too. He always got a lot of flack for kind of replacing Richie. I don't really see him as a replacement for Richie so much.
I don't either, really.
Because I think he was really a character all to his own, and I liked him a lot. I thought he added a lot to the show. And as I said, he does get a lot of flack for maybe even kind of
Ted McKinley
the show,
and
but I think that he added a lot to the last several seasons.
Ted McKinley in general gets a lot of flack for that. Like every show he goes on, even though Happy Days lasted like 4 years with him still on the show, they blame him for killing the show.
Yeah, and I don't really think that's fair at all for him.
No, me either.
And I don't think it's true either. I don't think that he killed the show at all. I think the show just ran its course. I mean, it lasted for 10 seasons. You really can't ask for much more than that.
It was actually 11 seasons.
Oh, actually 11 seasons. Yes, you're right. But I don't think you can ask for much more than that.
No, and like I thought the show lost a little something when Joni and Chachi left to go do their own show. I mean, they brought in characters like Flip, who I don't give Roger flack, but Flip really didn't do anything for me.
I think the only thing that I really don't like about the last season was that in the last episode, which was a 2-parter, they didn't bring back a lot of the main characters from the first season.
Potsy and Ralph.
Potsy and Ralph. I mean, Richie did come back. He wasn't there a lot in the episode. He was there briefly, but it would have been nice for them to kind of acknowledge the first few seasons a little bit more. But all in all,
the weird thing,
I thought it was a good season, regardless. But
right, the weird thing was Potsy was actually still on the show, and they for some reason just didn't have him on.
Yeah, that was very strange.
Like, they kept Potsy around those last 4 years. I don't really think they knew what to do with him.
It was really actually very comical, like when you think about it.
Yeah.
He kind of was this this 20-something guy who would just barge into their house like he lived there.
Yeah.
And his friends didn't even live there anymore. His friends were nowhere to be seen, but
He was
he was
just
still there.
just a lonely 20-year-old guy that's trying to hang on to the past, which actually kind of makes sense. But
It kind of was the whole show a little bit towards the end.
yeah,
But
like
yeah, it was funny. It was you kind of just have to take it for what it was. It was funny.
right. But I think Happy Days is one of the best shows of all time. There was a few years I really didn't watch it that much because I started getting into little more modern shows. But I've been watching it lately again on the Hub, and I still think it's very much a fun show. And something that really will always kind of be with me because I met a lot of friends at that Happy Days board.
For sure.
I loved the show when I was a kid, and Happy Days forever.
Happy days, happy days, happy days.
Happy Days, Happy Days, Happy Days. All right. Now we're going to close off tonight with a movie review for the movie Sucker Punch. A couple weeks ago in Chicago, we went to the IMAX movie theater at Navy Pier. Very, very fun place. We went to the theater. We seen the movie Sucker Punch. We really didn't know what to think or what to expect going in. It was the only movie playing, so we thought, why not? We'll give it a try. Probably the biggest star in the movie is Vanessa Hudgens. She was like the only really person that we knew going into it. We'd actually seen a preview for it on Conan a couple nights before we went to see the movie, and it looked kind of, weird.
And it was.
Oh, it was very, very weird movie. It started out with like this old guy who apparently like killed his wife. They showed him like burying the dirt over her body with this mean face. It was really over the top. We were just sitting in the theater laughing at that.
And we laugh at a lot of strange things. So this wasn't all. It wasn't one of those things where it's so bad it was funny. We just laugh at very strange things.
That's us in a nutshell. You will learn that about us very quickly. And kind of like the main star of the movie was this girl, Baby Doll, who was like his stepdaughter, I guess. He tried to kill her. He did kill his little sister, or her little sister, which was kind of depressing. And long story short, she got taken to this mental institution where she then, like, I don't even know how to describe this. She, like, fantasized herself into, like, another world where she was in, like, what do you call it, a hostel?
Something like that.
There was all these other girls being held against their will, and it was very, very strange.
And actually, I really thought that Vanessa Hudgens would have a lot more of a role in the movie than she actually did.
I think she was just on the poster because she was the biggest star,
Probably.
and they just kind of...
I mean, I did know who Emily Browning was, who was probably the star of the film because she was in a couple of other movies in the past. But I really expected Vanessa Hudgens to have quite a bit more to do with the movie, especially considering she was the one on Conan that we saw,
Right.
kind of, giving a preview of the movie.
I think that they used Vanessa Hudgens because they knew that she had kind of a following, and they could use that to try and bring people to the movie. But the funny thing is, if they attracted anyone, it's probably fans of like the High School Musical movies. And I really don't think that the High School Musical fans would. I don't think that was what they were expecting
I
going
think
in.
any High School Musical fan that went to that film left thoroughly disturbed.
Horrified. Like, we may as well spoil it since we're revealing it. Vanessa Hudgens was killed.
In a very brutal
Like,
way.
As were some of the other girls. We were just sitting in the theater just, like, shocked. Like, we went with another friend who, like, he jumped up out of his seat, like, in shock when they shot her. Pretty disturbing stuff. Like, not at all what we were
A very
expecting
dark
going
movie,
in.
I guess you could say. It was a very dark movie.
Very dark. We may as well talk about the highlight of the movie for us, the mayor. If it's still up on YouTube, if you search Sucker Punch Mayor right now, you can see kind of what the mayor is all about, what kind of a character he was,
Whoever
the hilarious
uploaded that
song.
video is my hero, let me just say.
Yeah. Like this mayor walks in smoking a cigar with a hilarious rap song playing. We were just all sitting in the movie theater just like losing it. It was
Hilarious.
one of the funniest movie scenes I've ever seen. And
you have to understand that if you go into the movie expecting this to be some kind of hilarious piece of comedy, you probably aren't going to think that it's that funny. We found it funny because taken out of context, like put in that context rather, it
Yeah.
was very hilarious. Like it just was it just was funny. I don't know. It was hilarious.
Well,
I can't really explain other than that. Just the whole scene idea was hilarious to me.
I think a lot of people think the mayor's hilarious. I mean,
Yeah.
when we were in the theater, for some reason, not many people were laughing, but like a lot of people that are like commenting on YouTube on that video, like they think it's funny. And what's not funny about that?
I know. I mean, he looks like a pimp. I mean, seriously.
He is a pimp. I mean, he's going to see these girls perform
And he
for
has this
him.
girl on his lap, rubbing his chest, and it's just
A day in-
kissing his
a day in-
neck.
A day in the life of the mayor. And then at the end, the end of the movie, I thought was really confusing.
It
like,
was. I think it left a lot to your imagination. You had to you could think of your own ending to it. I think really.
Yeah, there's like multiple fantasy worlds. None of us were really
And they
sure
kind of
what was going
overlapped,
on.
so there was really no
Yeah.
telling where one began and the other ended.
And the main character got like a lobotomy, while really the only girl that survived and went on to have a happy ending was the one that we thought was like the most unlikable. And she got away from there, went on the bus to get a fresh start. It was just a really strange movie, but we thought it was entertaining.
It was. What do you think about the movie? What do you think? Do you give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, indifferent?
I'd give it a thumbs up, but I think part of the fun of it was the atmosphere of us being there and watching it together. I think if I were watching it alone, I might have a different take on it. But
I liked it. I liked it. It was very confusing at times. It was very dark, very. There was a lot of action. I thought that the darkness kind of added to the charm of the film. It kind of was a part of it. It kind of made it.
It was almost like Tim Burtonist.
Yeah, very steampunk, very kind of gothic almost.
Yeah, it was. If you like dark movies, you'll probably love it. I mean, there was some neat fight scenes. There was
a lot of fantasy aspects to it. Actually, to me, it almost seemed like what you would imagine a real life anime almost being.
That's a really good comparison.
Because there were dragons, there were these just really out there fight scenes, like World War I planes and blimps and Nazis fighting against them with dragons and castles.
Yeah,
out there, just total.
It was a really visually good movie.
The effects were great.
The story was just a little bit weird, but if that's your kind of thing, you'll probably love the movie. We liked it. We enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. I will say that I did like it. I thought that it was a good movie. I mean, I'm still talking about it today, so that says something. But
it's just not one of those movies where you're going to necessarily know what was going on.
You're not going to necessarily leave saying that you had a great time, unless it is exciting. It gets your adrenaline rushing. It gets your heart pumping. It gets you. It's exciting, but it isn't necessarily a feel-good film. You're not going to sit from beginning to finish and see it as an ending where you're like, wow, that was a nice movie. You're going to leave disturbed.
It is definitely not a feel-good film.
No.
Definitely not a feel-good film.
But it is entertaining.
Very entertaining. And that should do it for our first show. I thought today went off really well.
I agree. I thought it did too.
Hopefully we'll get better as time goes by and kind of find our groove with things, kind of find we're kind of hoping to get guests in the future. We don't really know what kind of guests we'd be able to get, but we're hopeful that we might get some guests, maybe some famous, no promises, or even just some of our other friends. We want this to be a fun show. This is something that we want to keep doing.
And as we said at the beginning, we are very open to any type of suggestion or comments.
Absolutely.
Any critiques, This is very much a show for the people. What you want to see or hear, we will put out there to the best of our abilities. But
if you have any,
yes.
If you have any topic ideas for us for a future show, we'll do our best to try and we'll at the very least think about it. Do our best to try and incorporate it into the show. And
the only thing we really have kind of as a set rule is that we kind of just want to keep this a positive show. Like we don't really want to get into some long debate about politics or
exactly
or social issues per se, but
keep it fun.
Yeah, a fun type show.
Okay, well that'll do it for today. Want to thank everybody for listening, and we hope you'll keep continuing to support us.